This is Jessie Czebotar with another video in the series Unveiling the System. Let me quick go to a screen share. This episode is a special report and it's going to be quite extensive. In summary, this episode will be called a special report, Matters of National Security. It will include the UN's UNESCO, their heritage sites, including Yellowstone and Annie, Turkey, Eric Schmidt, the Google CEO, as well as the funding of crimes against children. I want to encourage you to visit my website, Kingdom Living with Jessie. On there, you will find this series, Unveiling the System. And I've been putting out videos this month that include the councils and the council of the system, what they are, how they operate, and how we see them working within our country. You can also find my videos, some of them in my special reports, my affidavits, my Congress petitions on timothycharleshomeseth.com. Some great resources that we've been covering that go along with this council series includes the single orbit. You get different things connected to the architectures, the 5 classic architectures, as well as the 7 different modes within musical theory. So that chart I'm using a lot, as well as this musical theory chart in which we see the 4-pointed star. So I encourage you to look into those things more to gain understanding. A great resource, I'll be putting out a series August 7th and 14th, 2 Thursday evenings that will include beginning to understand the architecture of the system, their 5 classical pillars of architecture, and how that connects to their altars. So again, that's August 7th and 14th. Registration is available on kingdomlivingwithjessie.com. I encourage you again to visit my website to see information on the council, and as we continue breaking this down, how it works, how it operates within the Luciferian Brotherhood and their sovereign military order. In the last episodes, the Council of the System, Parts 1 and Part 2, I began to break down the different emblems that they use, the seals, and what those contracts mean, who the authorities go to, and what it shows us. Basically, you're getting contracts with principalities, powers, and authorities. The majority of, their special groups, you'll see a lot of emphasis in this middle area here, and then also along the sides, telling us basically that every principality, power, and authority, that they're going to have at the top. You read these sigils like a clock. So basically at the very top, you have Abaddon, then you have Baal, Molech, Baphomet, Leviathan down here, Azazel, Thoth, and Samael. And then in the middle, you have Ashtaroth. So basically alliances with each of those powers and authorities within the spiritual world is what they're communicating. Now, the one today that we are going to highlight is UNESCO. And in episode 1, part 1, I explained, this symbol and what it represents within the Brotherhood system, showing, that they've got the 6 pillars through the UN that they're going to go in. But what do those, 6 poles or pillars really go back to? What authorities is it displaying? So as we go further today, we're going to be looking more into UNESCO and, their promo is that, they're going to make cultural scientific sites and, kind of safeguard places. I encourage you to go to the whc.unesco.org and look for their list of, what heritage sites are they classifying that they're supporting worldwide. This list shows each country. It's not all inclusive, as we'll see, because there's a lot more sites that come up that don't come up on this page. We'll look at another one here in a minute. But the main ones I want to point out that we're going to look at today is we see that Yellowstone National Park indeed is on their list. You see other national parks, including the Great Smoky Mountains, Yosemite, um, that are all on there. When you go to another site, you see that there's other places such as the Frank Lloyd Wright houses, as well as the Carlsbad Caverns National Park. Both the Frank Lloyd Wright, some of those areas, I've talked about the trafficking that I witnessed there as a child happening and how those sites were used in the trafficking of children. I've also talked about Carlsbad, California in one of my affidavits, as well as Yellowstone. If you want to see more on my Yellowstone affidavit and my two Congress petitions, I have a Congress petition also, which includes my Yellowstone affidavit and my Casper, Wyoming affidavits, and talks about my experience of being trafficked through those areas. Yellowstone, I've brought out that there is a lot underground there. In fact, there's a massive Nazi underground facility and secret city that they're going to call Asgard. Underground there, basically what you have at the face front structure of Asgard, it looks more like this, only taller, but you see, that very flat, prominent face front, and then you have two massive side walls like we see here. And then at the top of this, and it's higher, at the top of that, you have a black eagle symbol representing their allegiances. Both you have Rome and Germany, but their primary allegiance they're showing on that is to Germany. So under, that area, Yellowstone, you have the massive Nazi facility, uh, Asgard. It is equipped with a Hadron Collider. And then you also have within the Trenton area of that national park, I've identified that that area is where they have some decommissioned Poseidon missiles under there. And one in particular, but I've testified that those were put in certain areas that they use for training within the sovereign military order and the Luciferian Brotherhood at some of their massive training areas, and they are equipped with biochemical warfare and pestilences, such as you get, I'll just say biochemical warfare with those, but nasty stuff. So that, it's concerning when we think about organizations or specialty groups connected to the United Nations classifying this area as a heritage site, which then takes power and control away from we the people, and gives the United Nations or whoever's working in connection to that area underground with the Luciferian Brotherhood and the sovereign military control over weaponry, Poseidon missiles, and other things that could be used against we the people. So this is a matter of national security. Now, in connection to some of these things, we're going to begin to see a funneling of money. And I really want people to begin to look into UNESCO. And in connection to that, um, we're going to have an individual, the CEO of Google, Eric Schmidt. Um, Eric Schmidt is from the Falls Church, has connections with that, and he also is connected to sitting on the National Security Commission on AI or artificial intelligence. Um, and when we look at that, we see that he has a leadership role as a chair on the commission. The National Security Commission on AI was established by Congress through John S. McCain, who we know is connected to the Luciferian Brotherhood and connected to the 14th bloodline in there, which is going to be called the Muslim Brotherhood. And all of this came through the National Defense Authorization Act for the fiscal year of 2019. Um, the commission was tasked with providing recommendations to the president and Congress regarding advancements in artificial intelligence and its implication for U.S. national security. Yet within that, think about that, we have individuals that also are going to be connected to different aspects of the UN as well as connected to the Luciferian Brotherhood and the Sovereign Military Order, which I've brought out in past episodes of Unveiling the System, is a foreign government and a foreign military. They take, oaths, they take vows, they take allegiances. One is their vow to silence, the code of silence, which means that they can't talk about the things that happen in their circle groups. They want us to believe it's their religion, but really it's a system. And through this system, they're operating their foreign government and their foreign military, the sovereign military order. They also take the Code of Brotherhood, which states that, they have to love their brothers as themselves. That means whatever their brother needs, they're going to go to all extents of their means to provide that. It also includes that, it's their duty to cover their brother's sin. So, their first allegiance is going to be to the Brotherhood and the Sovereign Military Order. And they can sit in as many circle groups as they want within that as they study their degrees of illumination, and make their contracts with entities. And, with those entities, they're going to be worshiping those foreign entities that are in Lucifer's army. They're going to get into Solomonic, Enochian, different forms of magic. So that's all stuff that I've been bringing out. Um, so, how can they serve on a committee, giving advice to our president on matters of national security revolving artificial intelligence when, their allegiances really are not to we the people? That's a concern. So as we get into this, Eric Schmidt is widely recognized for his role as the former chairman of the National Security Commission on Artificial Intelligence. Um, according to this, his involvement um, is that, the mandate, the commission was tasked by Congress to advise the U.S. government on how to advance the development of artificial intelligence, machine learning, and related technologies to enhance U.S. national security. And again, I would propose that security really is to protect those who are connected to the Luciferian Brotherhood and the sovereign military within our country. Looking at the post, it says, following the expiration of the NSC AI, Schmidt launched the Special Competitive Studies Project, an initiative focused on strengthening America's long-term global competitiveness of emerging technologies, including AI, and their impact on national security, the impact, and society. And he is currently a chairman of the SCSP. All right. So as we look at this further, um, you know, some of the key things about this is that Eric Schmidt, um, he created a presentation that went, about this committee, or I'm sorry, this commission, and did his presentation to the oversight committee within our Congress. This is one of the three committees that I also petitioned for my voice to be heard, and um, sent in my presentation and um, petition. Sorry, let me correct that. I sent in my petition to speak before Congress and to share my testimony, especially in regards to the things occurring with this Luciferian Brotherhood and sovereign military order, as well as specifically things in regards to the state of Wyoming and Yellowstone National Park, including the Poseidon missiles. I have not received any contact as of this date. Um, so that's concerning. But Eric Schmidt also sent his presentation before Congress, which we'll look at here in a minute. The Oversight Committee says the United Nations is actively engaged in the realm of artificial intelligence, focusing on harnessing its potential for sustainable development while addressing associated risks. The organization emphasizes the importance of international cooperation to ensure AI development benefits all nations and individuals, particularly in bridging the digital divide. So we see that the UN is also invested in the concept of AI. This is the logo for the National Security Commission on Artificial Intelligence. You see it kind of looking like a hat, like an A without the crossbar, and you see, the bottom part of that A kind of being highlighted, almost looking like an eagle's head with a star above it, with the one diagonal line being red, the other two things being blue. Where does that symbol come from? That actually comes from the Brotherhood. Like they like to promote themselves as the Brotherhood, a secure foundation. We see, within their part of the Brotherhood system, you have the Scottish York Rite Masonry. That's going to include your degrees of illumination, starting at your first to your third degree. You have up till that. Then they become, that's their recruitment stages. Then they become a Master Mason. Once they hit that fourth degree, um, that is equivalent to 15 degrees of illumination within the Brotherhood, but they'll work up until they hit that 15th degree. Then the next degree focus is going to be your 30 degrees. So they'll continue to work on their degrees of illumination. And we see, the symbols that go with each of those degrees, from the fourth through the 33rd. After they get to the 30th degree in the Brotherhood side, um, they have 60, 90, 180, and 360 degrees of illumination. So that kind of gives you an idea. You see that the 30 degrees really is not that big of degrees of illumination within the overall look at the order, the orders within the Luciferian Brotherhood side. When we see the secondary numbers, they represent the working up, but if those numbers are a 3, it tells you that they also are now a Knights Templar. If those secondary numbers are a 5, that means that they're they sit in their brotherhood circle, plus they sit in their sovereign military circles, and they're working on their degrees within that. Um, the the 5 represents that they're a preceptor, a regional leader within the sovereign military order. The 7 represents that they are a quadrant leader, and that is within the sovereign military order. So, when they get past that 33rd degree, they'll be sovereign military, and then they'll work towards their preceptor and um, their supreme preceptor within the sovereign military degrees. Here, though, we see, at your 24th degree, the Prince of the Tabernacle. When we look at that symbol, we see that same outline we see for the national, the National Security Commission, where you've got that kind of A-shaped harp-looking symbol. And what the harp is used for in the Brotherhood system is to represent escort, particularly male escort symbols. It represents entertainment. So the question is, what is behind the AI that the National Security Commission, with individuals connected to the Luciferian Brotherhood and the Sovereign Military Order, what are they trying to bring into AI? And I think that, through AI, I guess, or through funding that they're receiving for AI, I would propose that it is, in fact, just this, that they are attempting to bring in escort services of sorts and, getting funding for it as well as a means for what they're going to do using, AI as a way to advance that. The concern in this is that, male escort services, um, you know, age needs to be defined, and I would propose that most of the time it's not dealing with adults per se. I believe that funding that they are receiving, that they will use for children, for the trafficking of children and the sexual exploitation of children. Now, some of the symbology we're going to see is also going to connect to your American Legion. And your American Legion is connected to the Luciferian Brotherhood. Here we see some of the symbology. We see that this gentleman here on his hat, you see the number 34. That can represent lodges, or it can represent their degrees of illumination. Um, so you get different things with the American Legion. We also see highlighted the 3 straight lines, and you see kind of a little curve here. This is going to come out as we see more about the National Security Commission on AI. We're going to see symbols that come back to the American Legion connecting the two. But we also see that the American Legion, um, you know, is connected to the National Security Commission. The purpose, it's the same as what we see online, is to recommend policies that will ensure the national security of the United States of America, to have an understanding of the federal budget process and the budget of the United States Department of Defense, State, and Homeland Security. So, being able to request funds from the budget federally from all those departments, the Department of Defense, the Department of State, and the Department of Homeland Security. To maintain a professional working relationship with the United States Department of Defense, State, and Homeland Security, and to maintain a professional working relationship with all congressional oversight committees. So, we see that they specifically are working with the oversight committee, but this here is connected to the Luciferian Brotherhood and the Sovereign Military Order. So, we've how can we have that secure for we the people when these individuals are going to have vows, oaths, codes that they take, as well as I've brought out in the structure of the council part 1 and 2. I talk about how these individuals, as well as in the Princes of Jerusalem in the council episodes, I bring out how they have their own constitutions. So how can they be loyal within our country to we the people if their allegiance is to a foreign government and a foreign military? Here we see, the National Security Commission on Artificial Intelligence. Uh, it was an independent commission of the United States of America from 2018 to 2021. So note that end date. Its mission was to make recommendations to the President and Congress to advance the development of artificial intelligence, machine learning, and associated technologies to comprehensively address the national security and defense needs of the United States. The Commission's 15 members were nominated by the United States Congress. That chair, being Eric Schmidt. The NSCAI began working on March 19th, and by November 2019, it had received more than 200 classified and unclassified briefings to help with the creation of its final report in 2021. Again, classified and unclassified reports are going to these individuals who also are members of a foreign government and foreign military. In the interim report, the Commission also agreed on 7 principles. The global leadership of AI technology is a national security priority. Now, let me just go back here for one moment. It's interesting just the numbers, and you'll see that within the Brotherhood system, how they'll hide imagery and symbols. We have, 7 principles that they're going to focus on. And, behind the scenes is that a homage to their 7 pillars that's going to go back to, dimensional access and their forms of architecture that they're promoting. You have global leadership in AI. AI adoption is an urgent imperative for national security. A shared sense of responsibility for the American people's security must be created from government officials and private sector leaders. Again, these individuals are highly going to be connected to a foreign government and a foreign military. It needs to find local AI talent and use it to attract the world's best minds. Now, in this, are they really going by merit, or are they going by their brotherhood connections? It's their duty to take care of their brother and provide every extent of the means. So who are they benefiting in this? Actions used for the protection of America's AI leadership against foreign threats needs to follow the principles of free enterprise, free inquiry, and free flow of ideas. Again, who are they going to consider a threat? It's going to be anybody who is going against the Brotherhood system or their sovereign military order. The technical limitations of AI are universally known. However, a strong desire remains for powerful, dependent, and secure AI systems. Now, what's scary about this is that, think about this, that this would go federally, meaning that it's going to go in every aspect of our country, as well as, it's going to be operating at a quadrant and a regional level. How was this used in regards to the things that we know the Brotherhood and the sovereign military do in the harm of children? Is this AI being used to cover up crimes being committed against children? Is it being used to make things easier for them to communicate with one another through different departments that are all working in coordination to commit crimes against children? Do those departments include things such as, our State Department, our executive branches, our legislative branches, our judicial branches? Is there a coordinated effort with these individuals, with the Brotherhood and their sovereign military to, to traffic children? In October 2021, the chair Eric Schmidt founded the bipartisan nonprofit Special Competitive Studies Project through his family-led nonprofit Eric and Wendy Schmidt Fund for Strategic Innovation in order to carry on the NSCAI's efforts and expand beyond national security. So he's going to go beyond our nation and go universal. You know, is that in connection with UNESCO and the United Nations, or other, other special agencies working throughout the United Nations? The Foundation for Defense of Democracies held an event on June 2023 called Thinking Forward after the NSCAI and CSC, a discussion on AI and cyber policy. Again, you had Eric Schmidt involved in that. We're going to get back to Google, and there's some interesting twists with this information. But so, some highlights with this is that, there was attempts to get funding. That funding, I encourage you research, uh, you know, look at these numbers. These were the recommendations, the report's recommendations include dramatically increasing non-defense federal spending on AI research and development, doubling every year from $2 billion in 2022 to $32 billion in 2026. That would bring it up to a level similar to spending in biomedical research, a dramatic increase in undergraduate scholarships and graduate study fellowships in AI, and the creation of the Digital Corps in Corps to bring skilled tech, founded in Digital Service Academy. And again, who are they trying to get it through? They're asking for green cards. They're asking for things connected to AI, PhD graduates, and, from accredited U.S. universities, as well as from the Department of Defense. So this is huge. It looks like they're wanting to do things that include transparency, but I think that a lot of that is just guff. It says that they're also, this is interesting, the U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia ruled in June 2020 that the NSCAI must comply with FACA and therefore hold open meetings and provide records to the public. The lawsuit was also filed by Epic. Now, Epic is going to go back to the Electric Privacy Information Center, but also is the name of a major company through the Brotherhood that is in charge of all of the, medical charting that is in all of the hospital systems. So, what are they getting access to, and what is the scope of that access, and is there accountability in all of this for these organizations? Now you can see, I encourage you to look up Eric Schmidt's presentation to the Oversight Committee. What I'm going to highlight in here first is the symbol. Remember, we were looking at the symbol for the American Legion, and I pointed out the three lines that curve up, right? We see the three lines here, but we see a little bit different curvature in that. We also see the single star at the top, and they've kind of made this like a crest. But what's interesting is when you look at the Solomonic contracts, you get three lines representing those base contracts. Those three lines go back to, in Solomonic magic, the verses of Exodus 14, 19, 20, and 21. When written a certain way, those three colonnades or lines break down into all 72 names of the spiritual authorities that King Solomon documented in the 72 Keys of Solomon. And when written a certain way, you end up with a hidden S or snake through weaving through the imagery. And what that goes back to, another way that they'll write this is like your money sign with the three colonnades through it. So it can be written either way. And here we see that hidden snake imagery. That same symbology is used in their Lebensborn symbols for the breeder programs. So, that's again concerning. What does, when we see the crest with the blue on top, like the shield with the blue and, the red and white stripes, that goes back to your sovereign military groups connected to your Sons of Liberty. Now, we also know that the five-pointed star, if it, the white star, that is in some circumstances will connect to your Order of the Polar Star. We also know that the white star, like that, also represents to them the Star of Bethlehem, the marriage of the Lamb, which you can see. Let's just go here for a second to it. In their book, Initiates of the Flame, it goes into their symbols, and we're going to see several symbols out of here. But the star, representing the Star of Bethlehem, the marriage of the Lamb, the union of the higher and the lower Christ, which is born. What does all that mean? It's basically meaning homosexual sex. So there's some concerning things, because if this imagery is more than just a symbol, um, you know, the concern is are these individuals connected to programs where money is going really for something else, which would include, sexual crimes against children. Um, So you can read his whole petition, looking at the oversight.house.gov, or looking at Eric Schmidt's petition to the Oversight Committee. But some things I want to point out in here is, you know, he wants to look at its potential impact on society. Several times he uses that word potential, like the potential applications. Here, this technology has the potential to revolutionize a wide range of industries. Now, while he may just be using that as a word, I've also brought out that that was one of the ways that the Department of Defense, particularly Colonel Michael Aquino, would hide the fact when they brought, reports before Congress for funding. They would use that word and to hide the fact that they were using children in the projects, the programs, and the experiments. And, you know, when we were in that training for the Luciferian Brotherhood and the Sovereign Military Order, they would call us potentials. So, there's concern that all of this funding really is going for them to be able to do things, to receive money. I mean, even this, it's like the potential application for generative AI or VAST. For example, it could be used to create personalized music playlists. Um, Stuff like that's already being done. Generate realistic virtual environments for gaming or training. Now, this is all stuff that's already in my affidavits that the Department of Defense under Colonel Michael Aquino and Nazi Michael Karkock and others, General Paul Villeli, they already were engaging in these exact things through different programs, such as you had the Stargate projects, the Voice of God project. Um, in my affidavits, I outline, environments that were created where they did training. So is this funding, are they all putting it under artificial intelligence because really they're dealing with interdimensional um, spiritual gates, portals, access into other dimensions, and it's going to get into things that they're going to do with it. Um, generating new music or artwork to writing news articles and even entire novels. Um, what are they going to do with this? That's the question. Now, the funding goes beyond there because beyond just targeting, the defense, um, and getting into um, that stuff, the report recommended uh, use for this in NASA. Now, NASA is highly involved in child trafficking, as well as bestiality. And, you get into basically the sexual prostitution and trafficking of children and beasts, such as primates. In some of my shows and in my affidavits, I've talked about individuals like Oprah Winfrey and John Walsh, who were huge investors in these type of programs through the U.S. military, as well as supplying for the U.S. military animals to be used in bestiality, as well as children to be used. Um, so, let's look at their symbol real quick. You kind of have this compass symbol here, which is used in masonry. We see, this is supposed to be the star or the ring of Saturn. That ring of Saturn, often in the system, in the Luciferian Brotherhood, representing Lucifer. It also represents the number 95. This you get the stars representing, you have Leviathan as well as other spiritual entities, archangels that's representing. In this one, the aerodynamics, we see a very similar symbol. We see the globe with the ring of Saturn around it, but the way that this one is displayed, it almost looks like an eye of Horus there. But you get, beyond the child trafficking, the bestiality, the other connection with NASA is that you get them being involved with children and animals in creating dark web pornography, which includes the bestiality. Um, so is the funding for AI really going to financially support what in the system they're going to call corn, which is, pornography, dark web pornography, including children and beasts. Um, your Department of Defense, just for your record, we see, under a certain council in the system, but we see again, a seal of the Luciferian Brotherhood showing authority, jurisdiction of a department within our country. The United States National Security Council, you're going to have a connection to all of that. We're going to see that there's more with NASA, with these bills, which I'm going to get into in some further episodes. Um, but we're going to see connections with Kissinger and others that you know, it's all going to interconnect. But let's go on for right now. Oh, sorry, not that one. So all of this, then, you're going to see a connection between the funding, the request for funding, um, all of this, and the AI things going to NASA and Jet Propulsion Laboratory. Now, I encourage you to look thoroughly at this Jet Propulsion Laboratory. As we get into that, let me see if I can get there here. Had to look different. Give me 1 second here to find the button. When you go under galleries, um, go under visions of the future, and you see all these very interesting, this get interesting gallery. And I'm really gonna break this down in another episode, but um, there's a lot of symbology in this, and you get kind of these little key phrases. And when I saw this, really what this made me think is names. All of this stuff, you get a connection to the planetaries through systems through the Golden Dawn. You get a connection through the Stargate projects. You see all this hidden symbology that also has, specific meaning within um, the Brotherhood system. You get terms like Mars, which Mars literally is an underground city under Area 51. That's in my affidavit. Um, as I break down crests and sigils, mountains are connected to your Order of Odin. Earth is a term that is often used in the projects and programs and connected in connection to the First Earth Battalion under General Vallely. Um, diamonds is something that's connected to the ritual sacrificing of children and then, turning their ashes into diamonds for dimensional use in sex magic. Ceres is a god connected to corn worship. Um, I'm going to do some episodes on that in Aquarius Rising Africa. I have two already done on the calendars, but I'm going to get into their worship of Ceres and the corn. And we know corn is a term that is used interchangeably to represent the creation of child pornography. Jupiter is a term that's, they'll connect that with Saturn, and it will be the imagery of the beast and the Antichrist and who's going to have power. Um, Auras is connected to your Golden Dawn. Um, so when you just look through Titans, like, um, Titans also is connected to certain grand high priests that, my former teacher, one of my former Nazi teachers in the system, she kicked him out of the area they were in because these high priests were having fights. And what were they connected to? They were known as Titans, and Titans is male, gay pornography. So I would propose in things that we are seeing that all of this stuff is going to connect to sexual terms, and that these future projects, really what this is your backdoor sites to uh, different types of dark web pornography that are being produced. And this is connected to the California Institute of Technology, the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, connected to NASA. I think there's a lot more to that. As we look further, um, we're going to see some things coming down the pipeline in connection to all of this that I kind of just want to briefly highlight. Um, Part of this AI funding that they're trying to get, they're trying to go through the National Defense Authorization Act. There's a lot connected with that, going back to legislation of 1996 through Bill Clinton. Now, I personally have testified that, in my affidavits that Bill Clinton is a member of the Luciferian Brotherhood, the Northern Circles, the same circles I sat in. I witnessed him, and it's in my affidavits, in rituals, um, and along with him and his wife, Hillary Clinton, their family, along with other political members, uh, who were considered Northern Circle members. That includes the Bushes and the Cheneys. In 1996, President Bill Clinton signed into law two significant pieces of legislation, the Telecommunications Act and the Personal Responsibility and Work Opportunity Act. Now, with these, what was big behind it was that, these legislations were to act as a shield for internet companies. It would make them, basically not liable for anything that third parties posted on their sites. Um, so in this, where is the channel of funding going? You see things that are put in place that are going to be a shield to people, um, and it's meant to look good. It's meant to look like it's in the interest of we the people. It's meant to look like they're, getting these funding and they've got all these future projects. But what are those projects really? Are those projects, are they getting funding to create porn? And that porn including children and beasts. Um, that porn on the dark web being more than we could imagine it could be. Um, you know, where is every penny of that funding going? Do we have complete transparency? There's kind of a catch-22 in this. They're receiving classified information to be able to do some of these projects and to do their reports, yet we know they're connected to a foreign government and a foreign military. We, the people, don't get that classified information. And then, we don't get to know what they're doing with it because we're just people. So, there is a issue with accountability in this, and this is part of how they're getting away with, getting us to pay for the things that they're doing, for the crimes that they're doing, especially with children. Um, in this we have further, we have some presidential actions which President Donald J. Trump have taken. um, he withdrew the United States from and ended funding to certain United Nations organizations and reviewing United Nations support to all international organizations. That went through February 4th of 2025. By the authority vested in me as President of the Constitution and the laws of the United States of America, it is hereby ordered. Section 1 Purpose. The United States helped found the United Nations after World War II to prevent future global conflicts and promote international peace and security. But some of the UN's agencies and bodies have drifted from this mission and instead act contrary to the interests of the United States while attacking our allies and propagating anti-Semitism. As in 2018, when the United States withdrew from the UN Human Rights Council, the United States will reevaluate our commitment to these institutions. 3 UN organizations that deserve renewed scrutiny are the UNHRC, the UN Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, UNESCO, which, we've pointed out, and the UN Relief and Works Agency for Palestine refugees in the Near East. The UNRWA was reportedly been infiltrated by members of groups long designated by the Security or sorry, by the Secretary of State as foreign terrorist organizations. Employees were involved in October 7, 2023, Hamas attack on Israel. The UNHRC has protected human rights abusers by allowing them to use the organization to shield themselves from scrutiny, while UNESCO has demonstrated failure to reform itself, has continually demonstrated anti-Israel sentiments over the past decade, and has to address concerns over mounting errors. Now, in this though, we've just looked at earlier, going back just a moment here, we still have UNESCO highly involved in territories in our country, marking certain areas, including Frank Lloyd Wright World Heritage Sites, the Carlsbad Caverns, including a lot of our national parks, our Statue of Liberty, Moravian church settlements, the San Antonio missions. Here you got the architecture, Frank Lloyd Wright, Hopewell Ceremony earthworks. I mean, our glacier, Alaska connections. I mean, they're highly involved in so much. And are they still, receiving funding for those areas, or, where has that gone then? Where has the funding and who's overseeing that now? Give me 1 second to quick find back where we are. So, we see that Trump withdrew support for some of those things and reviewing for different things. I encourage you to look for this White House, you know, document that's been made public. It looks like there's a lot that there's contributions to international organizations of public law. Where is all the money going, and what exactly, are they funneling? So, I'm very pleased with this. I think that it needs to be further looked at and, gone through. Again, that was Trump stepping up to the plate to, uh, you know, for transparency, accountability of money that we, the people, are paying and where that's going. Another thing to look into is your council constitution. This is going to be, this is one of the constitutions that, the system is going to use, the Luciferian Brotherhood at the highest levels. You see, this being connected to the UN and UNESCO. We see UNESCO symbol there. I encourage you to look at that, the Constitution of the United Nations, educational, scientific, and educational organization. So, within our own country, we saw all those sites that they're classifying as historical sites. And, this is their constitution under the UN that they're operating by. The governments of the states parties to this constitution on behalf of their people declare that since wars begin in the minds of men, it is in the minds of men that the defenses of peace must be constructed. What is that talking about? Mind constructs. Where does that go back to? That concept goes right back to Colonel Michael Aquino and his war trilogy series called Mind War, written by Aquino, supported by General Paul Vallely, in which, that threefold series, which is used by our Department of Defense as a war manual, talks about, how to institute mind constructs in the people. And all of that is a form of mind control. rather than trauma-based mind control. They're learning to control people, their minds, their spirits, and their will through mind constructs. Mind constructs appeal to the ethics and the morals. So, for example, when we had the massive COVID going through, um, the mind construct was if you want to be a good person, a good citizen, wear a mask. You don't want to get elderly sick. You don't want to put, your elderly neighbor's life in danger. In school, you have to isolate your children because you don't want your child to put other children in danger. So that's one way that they work a mind construct is by appealing to your morals and your ethics. Um, this gets into, that the great and terrible war, which has now ended, was a war made possible by the denial of the democratic parties of the dignity, equality, and mutual respect of men, and by the propagation in their place through ignorance and prejudice of the doctrine and inequality of men and races, that the wide division of culture now literally they're part of the brotherhood and the sovereign military order. What they're promoting is culture and education of humanity for justice and liberty and peace, and indispensable to the dignity of men and constitute the sacred duty which all the nations must fulfill in a spirit of mutual assistance and concern. Where is that going? It's upholding their keys of knowledge that they're going to pass down, right? Their brotherhood ideologies and beliefs. It's safeguarding, where they're working and operating out of our country and securing so that they can engage in their criminal activity under the Luciferian Brotherhood and sovereign military order without being caught. Um, their purpose is to contribute to peace and security by promoting collaboration among the nations through education, science, and culture in order to further universal respect for justice, for the rule of law, and for human rights and fundamental freedoms which are affirmed for the people of the world, without distinction of race, sex, language, or religion, by the Charter of the United Nations. Now, I would um, more than propose, but you have a lot of discrimination. That discrimination being that if you're born into a brotherhood family, you're raised in those brotherhood and sovereign military ways. You don't get a choice or an option. You are forced to participate in living both a cover life because you can't let others outside of your circle groups know what you do. You're bound by the code of silence. The things that you witness are discriminations against your sex, against, your beliefs. I've testified that the things that they engage in don't even classify as triple X. Um, these are the things that children engaged, in this system have to participate in against their will. They're forced to. Um, this really is important to read and understand the Constitution that they're operating off of. This is going to, get into further things, authorization of bills, um, an authorization bill, which is what they're wanting, the Eric Schmidt and the National Security Commission were trying to get these AI things authorized through the National Defense Authorization Act. But what do you need for that? An authorization bill is a type of legislation used in the United States to authorize the activities of the various agencies and programs that are part of the federal government and the United States. Authorizing such programs is one of the powers of the United States Congress. Authorizations give these things the legal power to operate and exist. Authorization bills must be passed in both the United States House of Representatives and the United States Senate. It must originate in the House, and they can be considered for time during the year. I encourage you to familiarize yourself with these, with the processes. How is it supposed to work? And are these groups following the proper procedures to establish these things? At the same time, you know, um, who is behind all of this? Who's authorizing things? Are those individuals in our Congress, in our United States House of Representatives, and in our United States Senates? Do we have members who are operating dually, you know, claiming to be citizens of the United States, but they're also operating under foreign constitutions and foreign vows, oaths, and allegiances to a foreign government, the Luciferian Brotherhood, and a foreign military, the Sovereign Military Order. National Defense Authorization Act for the fiscal year 2021. The William M. Thornberry National Defense Authorization Act for the fiscal year 2021 is a United States federal law which specifies the budget, expenditures, and policies of the U.S. Department of Defense for fiscal year 2021. It's been passed annually for 59 years. The act is named in honor of Representative Mac Thornberry, who served as either the chair or the ranking member of the House Armed Services Committee. Thornberry retired from Congress at the end of the congressional session. The $740 billion bill includes pay raises for America's soldiers, modernizations for equipment, and provisions to require more scrutiny before troops are withdrawn from Germany or Afghanistan. President Donald Trump had threatened to veto the bill because it did not include a repeal of the 1996 legislation shielding internet companies from being liable for what is posted on their websites by third parties. The bill also includes a provision to limit the president's use of emergency declarations to divert military construction funds to finance the expansion of the Mexico-United States barrier. Another provision within the act would require the military to rename bases that were named after figures from the Confederacy. The act also contains multiple anti-money laundering provisions and effectively bans unanimous shell companies. The bill passed both the House and Senate with veto-proof majorities on December 11th of 2020. On December 23rd, President Trump vetoed the bill. The House and Senate voted on December 28th, 2020 and January 1st, 2021, respectively, to override the veto that was the only way veto override of Trump's. All right. Now that's going to get into, how are they trying to use, what's, it removes the liability of third-party sites, what's posted on there. This is important because it gets into how they're attacking our U.S. president, President Donald Trump, and how they're weaponizing, what is being put on companies that host, AI things that could target we the people. What can they generate with AI? Are they making false videos? Do they have the ability to make false videos and incriminate people? This issue was brought out, this concern was brought out in the war correspondence of Timothy Charles Homseth on timothycharleshomseth.com that, is this part of the Epstein files and, what they're trying to bring out? Have they put false AI generated videos to incriminate people falsely in that information? And is this the way that they're trying to not only get it paid for, but also to use it against individuals who have not committed any criminal activity therefore thus covering up their own criminal activity. Now we're going to see Eric Schmidt also connected to a company, as well as the jet propulsion labs through NASA connected to relativity space. Look at this symbol, how they have, the V there. That is going to, again, connect back to the Brotherhood. In Initiates of the Flame by Manly P. Hall, you get a lot of the symbology used by the order, by the Luciferian Brotherhood and the Sovereign Military Order. Here we see where that symbology is going to come from. That is what they are going to call the thorax. In your sovereign military order, when they take their oaths or their vows, they're going to live cover lives. They're meant to look like Christians, yet behind the scenes, in their Knight Templar circle groups, they're going to worship at altars and worship other entities such as Baphomet, such as Thoth, Baal, Moloch. When they gather together, it usually is in connection to churches because their cover is to be Christian. They will use Bibles and, they will put that Bible, place it, they'll take their vows and place it on the back of the thorax. And you'll see them in their ceremonies. They'll all stand at one time, they'll all proceed up to the front. They'll, part and go in separate directions, and all of a sudden you'll see the elbow go up, you'll see him twist, and you'll see him go down on one knee, keeping that elbow up, because in their rituals and ceremonies, they'll have a cape on, and that's how they'll drape their cape, is by having that elbow up, and they'll go down on one knee and they'll pray, and they'll put the Bible on the thorax of whoever they're praying for. That is their symbol of death. The thorax represents a contract with Azrael, the angel of death that you see in the book of Exodus, being the one that was sent throughout Egypt to take the lives of the firstborn children. It also is connected to Thoth. We see here in Initiates of the Flame, it says in the book of Thoth, one of their books that they're going to use in magic, that strange document which has descended to man at this present stage of evolution as a deck of playing cards, we find a wonderful symbolism. Of all the suits of cards, that is the spade. And so, this same symbol of the thorax also being represented by a spade, that connecting to the gravedigger spade. Their representation of death, that also being the upside down triangle representing an unholy contract. This also representing your arrowhead. And where do we see that? We see that same arrowhead, thorax, gravedigger spade represented as the symbology for our national parks. They put all of their symbols, their signs in there, and here we see it in this company with relativity space. We see Eric Schmidt there as the CEO in connection to it. And look at even this, we see certain projects, products connected to names of DoD projects, hidden projects, programs, one of those being Aeon and Stargate. Tehran, I would propose also are project names. So, what is the connection between the Department of Defense and, then you get in further, some of these others, look at some of these other connections. BlackRock, that's going to go back to your David Lester Strait and, different groups working with your sovereign military order of the Luciferian Brotherhood. You got the Bailey Gifford and Company. Different, another big one that's going to come out, Playground Global. Um, all of this interconnecting, um, to things that they're wanting to do. And what are they wanting to do here? Relativity Space Inc. is an American aerospace manufacturing company. Aerospace, usually you're going to see in connection to NASA. Headquartered in Long Beach, California, Relativity Space is developing manufacturing technologies, launch vehicles, and rocket engines for commercial orbital launch services. As of March 2025, Relativity has announced plans to launch its in developmental launch vehicle Terrain R for the first time in late 2026. Um, Now this gets back then into, the jet labs that we were looking at. Um, I lost where it was here. You'll just have to forgive me. But go back to your jet propulsion group that we were looking at and the jet propulsion labs. Um, because right on their site, um, here it is, the Jet Propulsion Laboratory. When you go back to, their homepage, um, you know, that's one of the things that, so when you look at them, you're going to get a lot of the connection with the different vehicles that they're doing, sending rovers to Mars. Well, where's Mars? Under Area 51. Where I've talked about rituals that occur there. You've got spiritual gates that they operate, and they use children in connection to those operations. So, um, all of that's of concern. Now, one of the other things, places that this is going to break out in, is that we're going to see that there's a connection in all this to Annie Turkey. Um, and you get certain connections in, I believe, circle groups that we're going to see of the Brotherhood. Um, there's a lot underground here in Annie Turkey, and I'm going to be bringing that out, but I just want to, you know, there's a lot going on there. And, this is going to get into what is underground, what are these people doing, when they create these bots or other things, or they're having missions or projects or things that are going places. What are they gathering? What are they moving? What are they getting to buy, sell, and trade? And, Annie Turkey is one of the areas, um, that's considered a heritage site by UNESCO. So, what does the UN have to it? Why are they investing in this territory? It's known as 1,001 ONCE churches. 1,001 churches, and you're going to see a high connection to the Armenian people, as well as the Armenian Apostolic Church, known as the Mother Sea. This next week on Aquarius Rising Africa, I'm going to be doing a series on the Kardashians, part 1 and part 2. And in there, I'm going to get into the Mother Sea and the Armenian Apostolic Church, as well as, I'll get into a further episode. What do they all got going on underground there? There's a lot under there. One of the things when you're looking at areas, why is UNESCO so invested in this area? We see that symbology, Turkey itself, in their crest, we see that upside down moon. That goes to contracts, that connects specifically when you see the upside down moon at one level, that's going to connect to the sigil of Avedon. Wherever you have Avedon, you're going to have major underground end time military things. You know, so we also see then, that upside down crescent moon is connected to your southern jurisdictions. That's for filing, meaning that they're going to file everything in those jurisdictions under the sign of man. So this could be one of the ways that they do it. This also explains maybe why UNESCO, some of the sites that they have, they're using that thorax, that arrowhead symbol, because that's one of the signs of man in the system and shows, that those things are under the cherubic sign of the man representing the south. That everything's going to be paid through the southern jurisdictions. That's just one of the ways that they show it. We again see, in connection to Turkey, the white star, going back to the five-pointed white star, the Brotherhood, their sign for homosexual sex. As well as you get your Order of the Polar Star as well, that can be represented in those areas by that. We see the torch here, which is known as the Great White Light. We often see that in connection to the Order of Melchizedek. We see the wheat representing your Masonic wages, areas underground where they're maybe going to have markets where Masons can get their wages. We also see over here the Druidic oaks, where we see the oak leaves, the acorns, that's going to represent Druids, the elixir of life, because that's what they make from oaks, also known as white gold. So that area is, going to be classified as having unique things in their underground markets. Now that's going to come into things because this area is, we're going to find out, very high in things that they're producing, which I'm going to get into further. What it gets down to is Bedellian and the value of Bedellian to them. Bedellian is what's known as false myrrh, and it is known to make things last longer. In the system, it's one of the ingredients that is procured, meaning that, they're going to have alchemists at the highest levels of the system. You're going to understand alchemy and how to procure certain things, how to make tinctures. I've testified that, some of the things that they make at the highest levels, you get tinctures that are going to connect to adrenochrome use. You get two of those, one adrenochrome they're going to make, and it's meant to be functional. They're going to make it with vodka so that they can take it throughout the day, and it's meant to heighten their spiritual acuity. They're going to mix it with other hormones that come out of the body, like hormones out of your pineal gland, all of that, to give you that heightened spiritual acuity throughout the day. But they're also going to make an adrenal mixture that includes, formaldehyde and other things. And they're going to use that when they want to go into psychosis. And that psychosis, they're going to be very animalistic. They're going to be out of control. They're going to just, what it does, it makes you want to tear people apart. So that's part of how they engage in their evil, is by taking this advanced adreno that, has formaldehyde in it. Now, bedellium is one of the ingredients that they will put in those that then, makes things last longer. They also put it in paralyzer drugs that they're going to give to kids, the children that they're killing as victims. I've testified about, the Bushes and Clintons and Cheneys and others in my St. Peter's affidavit that, that I witnessed them laying children on the tables, and they were given paralyzers but not given painkillers, and literally those children were consumed alive. And that's, one of the things the Bedelian is procured for, is to give longevity, where they can torture the children longer. There's other drugs that are given that Bedelian will accentuate, um, and that makes the torture longer and prolongs things before the death of these children that they're horrifically torturing. So, just interestingly enough, this is one of the, you know, um, names of Bedelian uh, seed form. Bedelian is the resin that comes from uh, the tree or the seeds. One of the names is Google. Isn't that interesting? Um, Nothing is by accident in all of this. Everything, there's secret knowledge. What are they investing their money in, and what are they buying, selling, trading, and profiting off of? We're going to get into this further in my Kardashian episodes, because you're going to see why there's such an investment in this, and in that area in Turkey. Um, Further in that, beyond what's underground, I've testified about the different Nazi, training programs, and how, they worked in connection with our U.S. military, our Department of Defense, Central Intelligence. But in the Department of Defense, you get your Voice of God projects, which connects to your energy programs and, nuclear energy. Um, why is this area so highly prized, beside what's underground? Um, do they have in connection to their nuclear plant a training program where, children are being weaponized? Um, if so, is that why we have many elite and celebrity individuals who are so invested in this area and in the Armenian people? Is it just another way that the Brotherhood is covering up the trafficking of children, the weaponization of children, and the buying and selling and trading of children as weapons? So we're going to end our episode there today. Again, I want to thank you, um, for listening to this special report. I ask you, please, like, share, subscribe, share. Research these things. I encourage you to connect to the Tuesday. Every Tuesday evening, I join along with Infiltrated by Truth on Telegram, with Truth Punisher and Alex Kukanecki. Uh, Amazing chat. I encourage you, research, bring your information, put it on that chat, share it. We're going to be bringing out a lot of this stuff, and it should be part of the conversation. So join us on Telegram on Infiltrated by Truth. You'll always see the post for that every Tuesday on my Twitter page, Czebotar at Czebotar Jessie. You can also find me on kingdomlivingwithjessie.com, as well as my Patreon and other places where I am weekly. So, encourage you to follow me on those things. And again, thank you for your support. I also encourage you to follow my information on timothycharleshomeseth.com. Thank you.